All right, if we could get everybody to quiet down. Quiet down. Cantor Shira. Shana Tova, Gemar Chatima Tova. We want to welcome you all to Kol Nidre and Yom Kippur services here at Beit Shuvah. We're actually at Onichi Casa. We're not at Beit Shuvah. I want to make sure that I'm in full disclosure. So we're going to begin. To welcome you all, I wanted to introduce, most of you have already met her, but I want to introduce our Executive Director, Hayley Levy.
Good evening. I'm honored to be welcoming the congregation and Beit Shuvah family to the services this evening. I've had the pleasure of getting to know many of you over these past few months. As we come together tonight on these holiest of nights, I have some gratitude I'd like to express. First, I want to thank Rabbi Mark and Harriet, along with the rest of the Beit Shuvah board, for giving me the incredible opportunity to lead this organization into the future. I have lovingly been welcomed, and for that, I'm truly grateful. As you know, Beit Shuvah is a very special place. Special for so many reasons, but mostly, in my opinion, for the incredible dedication to helping people and families in need at typically their most vulnerable moment. We embrace the most broken souls and wrap ourselves around them. I see miracles happen every single day. Not a day has gone by since I started almost 2 months ago that I haven't heard a story or met with a resident or staff that has shared their unique journey. And each journey is truly unique. I always listen for what was the connection in each story. For some, it's the Torah study. For others, it's the music program. And for others, it's the reconnection to Judaism. In 100% of the people I've met, the community is what has made the difference. When I talk about community, sure, it's other residents and dedicated staff, but it's very much all of you that make up this community. I hope each of you can recognize the part you play in making this such a special place. I'm reminded daily that you never know how a kind word or gesture can make a tremendous difference in someone's life. This past week, I've been thinking a great deal about the theme for High Holidays that Rabbi Mark, Matt, and Andy have been talking about, God. When I think about my connection to God, for me, it's complicated, like many of you. I grew up in a Jewish family that was spiritual but not overly religious. When things were going well, I was always grateful and didn't really think much about God. However, when times were tough and challenging, I found myself even more grateful and connected and reaching out to God for some solace and guidance. It forced me to look beyond myself and the things I could not control. I knew that I needed a bit of extra support and guidance, and for me, God is and was always there. I especially enjoy hearing Rabbi Mark talk about Teshuvah every day, because we don't know when our last day will be. I'm reminded in life that it's often the small things that make a difference, not really the big things. These next 24 hours is a time when we conscientiously take time to reconnect with our souls and with God. This is a time for repentance, return, and to solidify our foundation. We have a strong foundation at Beit Teshuvah. Our foundation is what helps us respond to the changing landscape. I plan to be the new voice of how we respond to our community. I want to help grow the organization to be even stronger and better. We're facing an opioid crisis that is in the news daily. We are reminded that addiction doesn't discriminate and that being a doctor, lawyer, or university official doesn't make you immune. Being a human being makes you a candidate for addiction. Almost half of the residents that come into Beit Teshuvah are here due to opioids, whether it's heroin, Vicodin, oxycodone, or others. These are critical times, and we are fortunate enough to have the incredible staff to be able to respond. We are expanding our funding base to include some county funding to complement our grants and our private donations. We are looking at how to best market Beit Teshuvah so we reach the Jewish community and others in need, while getting our message out there about all the services we offer, including our temple. We're involved in social enterprise ventures that provide work therapy opportunities for residents and income to Beit Teshuvah to serve the community. I hope you've had the opportunity to reflect on this past year and what you've done very right. I constantly remind myself that what you see on Facebook or Instagram is really just a small snapshot of what others would like you to see or believe. Don't compare yourself or your situation to others. I know it's hard, and we all do it in some capacity. Just be your best self. That is more than good enough. It's great. I'm so very, very proud to be part of this Beit Teshuvah family. I love sharing myself with you, having my loving, supportive husband, Doug, with me at my side, and look forward to the many wonderful things to come this year. If we haven't yet met, I look forward to meeting you and getting to know you. My door is always open. Wishing you a good year and an easy fast. Shana Tova.
We continue with Out of the Depths. The words will be on the screen. Now our trio continues with Pure Heart. Oh, that was loud. Thanks, Kobe and Emily. Great job, guys. Give it up. And now Harriet will speak about transparency. Truth. May we speak the truth, page 395, yeah?
Yeah, you gonna read it?
You want to read it? You want me to
read it.
I'll read it. Okay. I'll read it. O Lord our God, many are the evasions and deceits which we practice upon others and upon ourselves. We long to speak and hear truth only, yet time and again, from fear of loss or hope of gain, from dull habit or cruel deliberation, we speak half-truths, we twist facts, we are silent when others lie, and we lie to ourselves. But we stand now before you, and our words and our thoughts speed to one who knows them before we utter them. We know we cannot lie in your presence. May our worship teach us to practice truth in speech and in thought before you and before one another.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom, Gemar Hatima Tova. Truth, dictionary definition, being in accord with fact or reality. Honesty, as opposed to truth, and this is the teaching of a great rabbi called Mark Borovitz. Honesty is being in accord with one's perceptions, interpretations of those facts, given one's blind spots and biases. So somewhere between honesty and truth, I'm going to talk. Our evasions, deceits, and self-deceptions, according to this prayer, are due to fear of loss or hope of gain. I think the prayer originally probably refers to financial loss or gain, But I think that's a surface interpretation, and I want to look at this through the lens of the loss of approval and the loss of love. Judaism has many laws about kosher money, more than about kosher food. But I think that we need to look at the losses through a currency of love, acceptance, and approval. It seems to me that we're culturally or maybe even biologically wired to place higher value on the opinions of others than we are on our own senses, willing, sometimes even eager, to deny what we see. Perhaps this was even a survival mechanism. As infants, our survival depended on pleasing or appeasing our caregivers. And we carry this with us into life. Looking outside of ourselves for affirmation of our worth. And we project our basic need for parental approval onto people throughout our lives, onto our mates, our peers, our friends, our colleagues, our superiors, our family members, umbilically connected to the opinions of others. If they, whoever they are at any given moment, think I'm good, then I'm good. And I judge myself good or bad, better or worse, depending on outside opinions. This became clear to me as a small child in kindergarten when I read The Emperor's New Clothes. You all know The Emperor's New Clothes? The people were told that the emperor was going to parade through the town in the most beautiful suit of gold, and anybody who didn't see his beautiful suit was stupid. And he was naked. And so everybody was oohing and eyeing, oh, he's so beautiful. And there was one little boy in the kingdom who said, but Mommy, the emperor has no clothes on. I identified with that little boy, and I have struggled throughout my life to have the vision and the courage to speak that truth. For those of you who prefer a scientific experiment to a fable, there's the Yale Milgram experiment, where a group of students were given the message that the people who were the subjects didn't feel pain when they delivered the shocks to them because the professor said they don't feel any pain. And despite what they saw and heard, that these people were in great pain, they kept turning up the dial because the professor's words had more value than their own eyes and ears. There's another teaching that I really like a lot. I don't know the source. A man came to the rabbi and he said, Rabbi, I want to study the mysteries of the universe. And the rabbi said, my son, I have two questions for you. When people praise you, does that feel good? And he said, yes, of course, Rabbi. And when they criticize you, do you feel bad? And he said, yeah, of course. The rabbi said, then go away, my son. You are not yet ready to study the mysteries of the universe. And the message of that is when the opinions of others are your higher power, you cannot truly connect with the God of truth. And I think in addition to worshiping the opinions of others, we make perfectionism our higher power, measuring ourselves against an impossible, unachievable standard. We're either perfect or abject failures. And to cover up these feelings of shame, we pretend, we deny, we project our imperfections onto others and blame them for our flaws. For me, my struggle continues. The most recent battle is learning bridge. That I'm even attempting at my age to learn something so new and complicated is progress. But I am way out of my comfort zone. I was the kid who refused to go to kindergarten because I didn't know how to read. And they kept telling me, that's why you go to school. You learn to read there. But not knowing and risking looking foolish was terrifying to me. So here I am, 75 years later, 5 years old again, facing my first duplicate bridge game, beginner duplicate, praying for some earthquake to save me from this public humiliation, being reassured by my husband and all the other people, it's only a game. You don't learn unless you make mistakes. The only way to really learn is to play and to make mistakes. But they didn't understand that I was having a total panic attack. So my hope for all of us in this new year and for myself is that I slay this dragon, that I realize that it's only a game, that it doesn't define who I am, that I be willing to stay open and to learn, and that I don't give a fuck what the better players at the Beverly Hills Bridge Club think of me. Thank you.
Beit Tshuva, y'all. Thank you, Harriet. Now, Brad, is going to come up and speak about forgiving. Go for it.
Hi there, my name is Brad, and I'm an extremely grateful member of this community. My first forgiveness I want to ask for tonight is for being late. Had a little problem getting here with valet parking. I apologize for that. But this is just such a beautiful scene here. It's very overwhelming for me, and I'm just so blessed. So, April 2009, I walked in the doors of Beit Teshuva, and I became a resident, room 233. I walked in with really no integrity, no moral compass to speak of. I believed the lie that all the gifts I was given in my life entitled me to gain material excess at the expense of everybody that I knew. I also believed the lie that I could drink and I could gamble like normal people. Clearly those lies were just that, lies, because I had no handle and no grip on my life. I had no dignity, and much, much, much worse than that, I robbed the people closest to me of theirs. I remember when I first got into Beit Teshuva as a resident, I'd sit on Friday night at Shabbos, usually get a seat toward the back, stare up at the bima, and I'd just gaze. And what caught my attention really were the sober birthdays, the cakes that were taken. And I'd sit there really with great curiosity, but frankly, great frustration. Because I kept saying to myself, how in the world is a guy like me going to be redeemed? How in the world can somebody who did what I did, and the things that I did, the people that I hurt, get up there and take a cake? And even if I had a sober birthday, who would even want to show up for it? And that was really a snapshot of my early recovery. But much, much worse than that, it was actually, as it turned out, to be a comfort zone for me. I wallowed in that self-pity. Rabbi Mark writes in his book about malignant shame, hostile narcissism. I didn't really know what that was at first, and after I read it, it pretty much summed me up. I made it all about me, still. I couldn't get over the hump. And it was an extremely difficult period. I started to realize, though, that when I made it all about me, I couldn't get anywhere in my recovery, and I had to really make a shift. The shift came when I started to care for others much more than I cared for myself. And I'm not going to tell you it was easy, because it wasn't. But it's amazing how things work themselves out when I take my actions and I do the next right thing, but I do the next right thing in the effort of trying to help somebody else, as opposed to helping myself. And excuse me. Throughout my recovery, there have certainly been highs and lows. But one thing that I've realized is that I can live with my errors. I can live with my mistakes. Mistakes and errors are always going to be a part of me. They're not going to leave me. I had to accept that. I really had to accept that the things that I did are still a part of me. But the key is I don't have to be defined by them. I don't have to be defined by my errors. What I have to be defined by is how I respond to my errors. What I do and how I make good in the world. And that, to me, is the big payoff. And as I've started to figure out that I could live a life in faith and not fear, live a life in gratitude and not entitlement, the payoff is extraordinary. I used to talk. All I did was talk. And now I listen. I used to blow people off. And now I listen. And being here in this community and being an equal in the community is really my greatest reward. I worked on Wall Street for 23 years, and it used to really all be about dividends, cash dividends. And now my dividend is really just living well. And that's the greatest dividend that I could get paid off of. So thank you.
So we're about to begin the Kol Nidre prayer. Kol Nidre, all my vows. We do it three different ways. We do it with an instrumental, then we'll do an original, and Cantor Shearer will, of course, do the traditional Kol Nidre. So how we do this is I call people up to hold the Torahs, and I'm going to ask them to stand on the two sides of Francesca. And we do it 3 times, so we stand for a little bit. This is Jewish calisthenics. So I'm going to ask Rick and Orly to come up first. And I'd like to ask Leo and Susan to come in and hold the Torah, and Doug and Hayley. We're opening the ark, so please stand. Doug? Go stand over there, okay? Stand here. She doesn't. For the second Kol Nidre, I'd like to ask Russell and Mort to come over and hold this one. The Verstein family, come up and hold one of these over here. And the Bendensons, come over and hold one, please. Before we do it, I have to say this formula. V'shiva shalmala v'shiva shalmata. By the authority of the heavenly court, by the authority of this earthly community, with divine consent and with the consent of this holy congregation, we hereby declare it enjoyable, appropriate, and holy to pray with people who have transgressed.
Kol Nidre ve'esarei v'harabei v'chinuyeh v'chinuyeh v'kinusei u'shavuot.
For the final aliyah, I'd like to ask the Stablers, Ronnie, Joe, and Steve, to come up and hold the Torah. I'd like to ask Sam DeLug to come and hold the Torah. Nancy, would you join Sam? Stand next to Sam. You're his guard. You're guarding the Torah. And for the third one, Jared and Noah. Right over there.
My mom couldn't come, so my son Nicholas.
Okay, all right. Nick's coming. Good. Okay, so you can be seated. Our custom is to pass the Torahs around. We need Hala and Michael to help. Yeah. Our tradition here is that you put the Torah in your heart so that the words from the Torah, the letters will form on your heart, and then they'll form the right words inside of you. We continue on page 400 with the Shehecheyanu. Sure.
I don't know what.
Right. You're right. Holy One of blessing. Holy One of blessing.
Your presence fills creation. You
Keep us here. Shehecheyanu.
keep us alive.
Kiyamanu.
Sustaining our love.
Kiyanu.
Those born us keep us alive. Sustaining our You bring us here. Holy One of blessing, presence fills creation. You keep us here. You keep us alive. Sustaining our helping us reach this day. You keep us alive. Sustaining our Lord. As long as
As Hayley said, we're many things, and one of the things, of course, we are is a shul. And just to show you that we're not regular, but we're a traditional shul, right? Do you know what a traditional shul is? Just so you know, I learned this from a famous rabbi. A traditional shul is they do it the way they want to. And everybody has a different way of doing it. Just so you know. So, Janice Resnick, who is one of our board co-chairs, is going to make our appeal.
Last year, the United States experienced the largest annual jump in drug overdose deaths ever recorded. More than 65,000 people died of drug overdoses in the United States last year. In fact, sadly, drug overdoses were the leading cause of death amongst Americans under 50. And the problem has continued to worsen in 2017. All indicators suggest that this year we will break last year's record. According to the latest report from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the most recent tragic increase in drug overdose deaths follows a pattern that has been growing steadily since 1999. In the last 17 years, more than 250,000 people in the United States have died from overdoses related just to prescription opioids. Today in California, this date, 11 people died from drug overdoses, as they do each and every day in our state. 85% of all addicts in California never receive the treatment they need. The late British philosopher Bertrand Russell once said, "The mark of a civilized human being is the capacity to read a column of numbers and weep." We in the Beit Teshuvah community, we weep. We weep when we hear these numbers. We feel the pain of those numbers every single day. Every single person in this room tonight has a story filled with loss, pain, disappointment, and triumph, sometimes momentary triumphs followed by sad reversals, and sometimes long-term redemption followed by new challenges and new triumphs, sometimes small, sometimes dramatic, but one thing is for sure, it's never boring. I know from the family groups I have been through and from all of my Beit Teshuvah friends that my story and the story of my family is really no different than the story of anybody in this room. Yes, we are all unique, and the details of our story might vary, but we share much the same story. My story is about my brother Michael and his struggle with addiction and sobriety. It is the story about his daughters, my nieces, and their struggle to accept their father's frailties and missteps, and their struggle to forgive and to understand and to agree to start over. It is a story about Michael's father, my father, whose last words before he took his final breath were an admonition to Michael to get sober and to stay sober. It is the story of my amazing mother who has shown us what it means to reach the highest levels of parental love, to love unconditionally, through thick and through thin. Michael got sober at Beit Teshuvah more than once and is now brilliantly directing the theater program, following his passion, and he tells me that he is working every day, every minute of every day to stay focused on staying sober. My story is also the story of my son, Yoni, who came to Beit Teshuvah lost and loaded and probably full of self-loathing, and who overcame his addiction and continues to live in Beit Teshuvah's sober living system and continues to work with Rabbi Mark to find his purpose and create a life of independence and meaning. I am proud of both Michael and Yoni, and I am also aware that our story would have been very different without Beit Teshuvah. I am not sure what would have happened to our family, to Michael, to Yoni, to all of us, without this amazing and magical place. 85% of drug-addicted Californians do not have access, for whatever reasons, to the treatment they need to have a shot at overcoming their addictions. 65,000 people died in our country last year from drug overdoses, and just today, 11 Californians died from drug overdoses. Some of the people in this room mourn their loved ones who are amongst those numbers. We in this community can read a column of numbers and we can weep, but we can do more than weep, and we do more than weep. Tears do not pay mortgages or salaries of rabbis or social workers. Tears do not build buildings or pay for recovery programs. At Beit Teshuvah, our empathy and our compassion take our tears and from them create opportunity and life. Each year, because of Beit Teshuvah and its supporters, hundreds and hundreds of people receive top-notch intensive residential, spiritually based, and highly individualized treatment. Each year, because of Beit Teshuvah drug prevention and education programs, we educate and counsel thousands of high school students about the risks of addiction and help them with strategies to avoid drug addiction. Each year, because of Beit Teshuvah, hundreds of rabbis and educators from all over the country are educated and sensitized about addiction, thereby impacting thousands of people around the country who so desperately need the type of help which we are blessed with here in Los Angeles through Beit Teshuvah. Each year, because of Beit Teshuvah, families who thought there was no hope of reconciliation are reunited. I know this, it happened to us. Each year, because of Beit Teshuvah, addicts, lots of them get sober, and they keep coming back sober. And each year, because of Beit Teshuvah, addicts in recovery re-enter the workforce and get married and have children. Just come and listen on a Friday night to the words of those celebrating their birthdays. The stories are dramatic, and every one of them is true and real. And you know that because you are those stories. So what do we ask for you? What do we ask from you tonight? We ask you to hear the numbers, and we ask you to have the humanity that Bertrand Russell spoke about, the humanity to weep, and we ask that you take your empathy one step further. 85% of California's addicts do not have access to the treatment they need. At Beit Teshuvah, 98% of our residents need assistance to help cover the $12,000 per month cost of the outstanding and effective care we provide. 70% of our residents pay $500 or less. Shema, listen. It means to hear. Hear these numbers. So what do these numbers mean? These numbers mean we need your help. There was a study done which suggested that there are limits to a human being's capacity to feel compassion. The study showed that when people hear about really big problems affecting large numbers of people, that the numbers fail to spark emotion or feeling and thus fail to motivate action. The phenomenon even has a name. It's called psychic or psychophysical numbing, defined as the inability to appreciate trauma as the numbers of people affected get larger. Essentially, in those circumstances, there is a diminished sensitivity to the value of human life. I am a person, like most of you, who hopefully all of you, who usually believes in studies by social scientists. But in this case, I reject that conclusion as it relates, at least as it relates to our Beit Teshuvah community. Yes, it might be true that we cannot wrap our heads or maybe even our hearts around these huge numbers. 65,000 drug overdose deaths, 11 people who died today. 85% of the addicts in California do not get the help they need to succeed in recovery. But we don't necessarily have to wrap our heads or our hearts around those big numbers. We just need to wrap our arms around those people right here in this room, those people with us today. Someone like some of the stories you're going to read about tonight or hear tonight from some of our residents and graduates. Some people whose incredible stories you will be very moved by. Wrap your arms around one of our residents by donating $12,500, which covers 1 month of residential care. Wrap your arms around one of our residents by donating $7,200 for 1 month of intensive clinical therapy and addiction counseling, or $3,600 for 1 month of spiritual counseling. Wrap your arms around Beit Teshuvah, because you all know on so many occasions, Beit Teshuvah has wrapped its arms around you and around those who you love. Wrap your arms around Beit Teshuvah in the best possible way by ensuring that Beit Teshuvah can continue doing what it is that it does so well. It saves souls, saves families, saves lives. Who could ever ask for a greater opportunity or blessing for Kol Nidre than that? You all have cards on your chairs. I think they're glued on or taped to the back of your chairs. I meant to bring one up. Here, this is what they look like. We're going to take a moment right now. I think there's pens. We'd love for you to consider my words and consider your story, and please be generous. Gmar Chatima Tova.
Thank you so much, Janice. Your words are powerful. And as Hayley was saying earlier, so much of what this makes this place unique is this community. And grateful, Janice, for you, for all of our board members, for everyone who's able to give. And thank you in advance to everyone who's willing to help keep this community going and continue the work that we do, which is so special and so critically important. I'd like to ask Richie to come up now. He's going to tell us about the power of speech.
Every word for the sake of heaven. Sovereign of the universe, God of mercy and compassion, may it be your will this day and every day that I guard my mouth and my tongue from stumbling into sinful speech. Keep me from the sin of gossip, as the Torah says, you shall not carry a false report. Keep me also from the sin of talebearing, as the Torah says, you shall not go about it as a talebearer among your people. May I be careful never to speak against a single person, and surely never to speak against the house of Israel. Keep me from the grievous sin of speaking against the ways of the Holy One who is blessed. Keep me from speaking falsehood, as the Torah says, from every false matter keep far away. Keep me from flattery, frivolity, and deception, from humiliating another human being with words. May my words be free from pride. May they never be spoken in anger. May every word that I speak and every deed that I perform be uttered and done for the sake of heaven. So first of all, let me just say how stoked I am that I don't have to follow Harriet's story. Hopefully you guys forgot how good that was. I study Heschel with Rabbi Mark. And when we study Heschel, we study our place in this world, how we fit in. We tend to always fall on taking a moment to reflect on how incredible it is that we're even here, living and breathing, but also to remember that this experience on earth comes with responsibilities. This is what Heschel calls radical amazement, a perspective that we can choose to have on the world around us where we take nothing for granted. The moment we treat life with a sort of dismissiveness, we edge farther away from a spiritual experience and we forget our place in the world. It's the idea that I've been given the gift of this world and the people in it. So the question then becomes, how do I honor the world? How does my speech honor this world that has been given to me? And this is something I normally, I'm sure we all do, take for granted because I'm literally doing it all day long, talking, interacting with others, not paying attention to what I'm saying most of the time, like almost all the time. And so really, how do I become cognizant and aware of how what I say affects those around me? And this is like an outward dialogue. These are the words I put out into the world. And then there's this internal way of speaking. And for years, I hinged on negative self-talk. My thoughts are a form of speech, and those thoughts for a long time were really bad. You don't go on a 3-year meth and heroin run and walk out of it like, I think I'm doing pretty good with myself. You tend to have that negative self-speak, and it just goes in a revolving cycle. It's already difficult for me to go about my day and be aware of how I speak to others, but it's even harder to keep an eye on how I speak about myself to myself. I always need to be aware of the power my words and my thoughts have to change things around me. The butterfly effect, this idea that we're all, there's dots and we all need to really, it's our responsibility to connect the dots. So when I am aware of the power my words have and the thoughts that I have change, the power that I have to change others, I find out who I really am, and it changes my perspective on the world. So through these little baby steps, after becoming a part of this community, I managed to somehow get to the point where I can understand that we're all interconnected. My actions, my words not only reflect who I am to other people, but also everyone else, the world around me. We're all part of something bigger. If I can make a shift in the negative self-talk that I had for years and really understand my value to this world, even at my worst, then surely I can keep my outward speech positive or be aware of it, or devoid of anger. Like it says, free from pride, without deception. It's about moving away from falsehood. It's about moving towards living in truth. And my truth is that I actually matter. I'm not that terrible. I make a difference in the world. My words matter. Everyone's words matter. And as I move towards the light in the new year, if I choose to speak with love and understanding and acceptance, it's really simple. I just put good out and I get good back. Thank you.
Thank you, Richie. We're about to say the Baruch Hu. The Baruch Hu is the traditional call to prayer. So in a minute, I'm actually going to ask us to do one thing first. We're talking a lot about community. We're talking about connection. There's a lot of people here. I think we finally got the full house, right? Everybody's here now. After I ask everybody to stand up, I'm going to ask you to turn to somebody, just one person. Rabbi Mark's going to kill me because it's going to take more time. But I ask you to find just one person who you don't know, shake their hand, introduce yourself. We're in a big place, but we're still a community. I want you to reach out, find somebody who you don't know yet, and connect with that person. Okay, so everybody stand up before the Baruch Hu. Just one person. It's important to connect with each other, so let's connect. Okay. You can get to know him more after services. After the fast, you can go out for a cup of coffee, maybe. What? I'm being told this was a bad idea, but I like the energy, so I'm going with it.
Okay, everybody. All right. We're starting back with the service, the Baruch Hu. We got to do the prayers.
I never thought the day would come when I did something and you were telling me we had to keep going with the prayers. Okay, the cantor is going to continue.
Okay, everybody, please stay standing.
Page 408, the Baruch Hu, the call to prayer. You may be seated. Just in case you still have an envelope, there are still some members of our development department up and about. If you want to raise that up, thank you very much. We continue with Ahavat Olam, found on page 409.
It is
I'd like to invite Nicole Goodman up to talk about the Shema.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole. I'm a very grateful member of this community. Okay. Reflecting on the Shema, I'm asked how I am hearing, listening, and understanding God's call to me. My first step was I had to figure out what that means. What is God's call to me? How do I know that He is calling? What does that look like? For me, I can justify that God's call to me comes in very convenient instances where I can justify not doing the things I should be doing. For example, if there's immense amount of traffic on the way to the gym, I could easily see that as God telling me that today is not the day to exercise. You may think I'm kidding, but a lot of the times I actually do that, and I take it upon myself to play the role of God. This year, my commitment to myself and to my community is to figure out how to get out of my own self-will and put myself into God's will. In the past 3 months alone, I've seen myself facing this dilemma more than ever. I came to Beit Shuvah almost 6 years ago as a broken teenager, and since then believed that the work was done, but that's not God's will. The truth is I'm never done healing, and God continuously has more in store for me. Recently, when I reached a new bottom in my life, I was confronted at looking at what God's will really is for me. I was at a meeting, and I finally was able to see and hear God's call right in front of me. It was in the form of a speaker who told my story and their struggle and the solution that they found. From that moment, I decided that it was finally time for me not to turn God away and to take a leap of faith. From that decision, even though my life became very different and structured, it also became easier at the same time. I am making the decision that God's call to me is through the people in my life who care for me, the real me, not the people who should be good for me, not the people who just take from me, not the people who just see me from the outside, but the people who speak to me through the voice of my Father watching over me. I am encouraged by these individuals on how I can continuously see myself in God's image, to not let my head tell me that I can't or that I'm not strong enough, how to continue to be a better person every day, and how to take care of myself and not just everyone around me. I'm so grateful to be in this new frame of mind for this year and to be surrounded by my own versions of God who push me and inspire me to continue growing. I know that if I listen hard enough, interpret with the people who care for me, and engage in right action, I will be able to understand God's true calling for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. We continue together with the Shema led by the cantor on page 412. We're going to continue on page 417. Brandon is going to come up and talk about the fringes are the sign.
Good evening. I'm Brandon, a very grateful member of this community. In antiquity, slaves carried on their persons the seals of their masters. The fringes are the sign and seal of our submission to the will of the Holy One. So I was left thinking, what are my fringes and what are my signs? And I think my fringes are where I connect with people, and the signs are how I connect with those people. So in active addiction, the people that I hang out with, the things that I did were very clear that drugs were my higher power. But over the last 15 years in sobriety, Rabbi Heschel has a teaching where he talks about there's something sacred at stake with every human interaction. And I've tried to conduct myself in sobriety in that way. I certainly haven't done it perfectly. I get angry and judgmental and scared. And in the spirit of the holiday, I ask for forgiveness and redemption and commit to a redoubling of my efforts to passion, truth, and service. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Brandon. I'd like to call up Andy, who's going to talk about the Hashkivenu on page 420. Help us, O God, to lie down in peace and awaken us to life tomorrow. May we always be guided by your good counsel and thus find shelter in your tent of peace. Andy?
Thank you. My name's Andy. I'm a grateful member of the community and also a recovering drug addict and alcoholic. This prayer, Hashkivenu, help us to lie down in peace, asks me, what is my relationship to God? How do I seek protection from God, and how do I curb and contain my addictive behaviors on a daily basis so that at the end of each day I can lie down in peace and to awaken to life on the morrow? Although Jewish, I grew up as a high holiday Jew, so my present relationship to God, or a power greater than myself, comes not from the big book, the Torah, but from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and from working the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I had no relationship to a power greater than myself until I got sober over 17 years ago and developed a daily practice, not just a high holiday practice, of seeking guidance from a higher power. I work at Beit Teshuvah and facilitate the 12-step and Big Book Alcoholics Anonymous groups for the residents. I tend to be a bit of a big book thumper. So when I read this prayer, I looked at it through the lens of recovery and immediately thought of how nicely it blends with what I read each morning from pages 86 and 87 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Hashkivenu, help us, O God, to lie down in peace and awaken us to life on the morrow. May we always be guided by your good counsel and thus find shelter in your tent of peace. From page 86 of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, on awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. Hashkivenu, shield us, we pray, against our foes, against plague, destruction, and sorrow. Strengthen us against the evil forces which abound on every side. From page 86, under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance, for after all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. Hashkivenu, may we always sense your care for you, our merciful sovereign. Guard us always and everywhere. Bless us with life and peace. From pages 86 and 87 again. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here we ask God for inspiration and intuitive thought or decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We are often surprised how the right answer comes after we have tried this for a while. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, "Thy will be done." Hashkivenu, praise to you, O God of peace, whose love is always with us, who shelter your people Israel and protects Jerusalem in love. Recovery, sobriety, a connection to myself and to God, all required that I replace old self-destructive habits with new healthy ones. So a new habit is that each morning I pray and meditate for guidance and protection from my higher power. It was not and is not a one and done for me. I need help every day. I need to ask God to guide me every day. My hope and prayer for all of you in this upcoming year is that you can find some practice that you can incorporate into your daily life and will allow each and every one of you to become the very best versions of yourselves. Shabbat Shalom, Gemar Tov.
Thank you, Andy. The cantor and the choir continue with the Hashkivenu, once again found on page 420.
Mazileno, Ata, Ata, Iesh al reino, Mazileno, Ata, Ata,
Barbara is now going to come up to talk about the Ki Hine Kachomer.
Hi, my name is Barbara, and I'm a grateful member of this community. So this prayer with each paragraph tells us something that might be obvious to most, that we are in God's hands and we have to let him shape us. Well, that wasn't always very obvious to me. When I was growing up, although I said I believed in God, I did not put it into practice. I never really thought about it spiritually, deeply, or even that God had a part in my life. The thought of being in his hands never really occurred to me. What I was doing, I realized much later, was living life as I wanted. All Barbara's will, all Barbara's shaping. I was doing it all. I did let others shape me at times, but it still wasn't God. It was others, friends, husband, anyone who I wanted to be like and fit in with. My ex-husband loved to go fishing, and he loved to go fishing in lakes, in creeks, and I went along with it, you know, like, oh, let's go fishing, la, la, la. But you know what? I hated it. I hated it, but I did it because I wanted to be liked by him. Loved by him more. That didn't work out either. When I first got sober in 1980 and I started learning again about this higher power, I wrote in my AA book, which I still have, what is the difference between Barbara's will and God's will? Because I really didn't know. And it might sound very basic to you, but it took me a very, very long time to get this concept. You'd think as time went by that I would get it, because I was not even ever successful using my will, keeping myself in my hands, all by myself, no one guiding me except me. I once had a sponsor who said, when are you going to stop putting the campfire out with your face? And my answer was, yeah, but, because I know better. I have a graduate degree. I know what's going on. I can fix this. I'm smart. But my best thinking landed me in jail for forging prescriptions. And then I ended up at BTS. My molding and shaping of myself at that point was pretty much a disaster. So they told me I had to learn to become powerless, surrender, and turn things over to a higher power. Let him be in charge. Let me be in his hands. That was so hard, and it was so annoying, and are you kidding me? But you know where that came from? That was all my fear and all my arrogance. And what I realized was that it was time for me to take that leap of faith. It had been made so abundantly clear to me what continued to happen when I did Barbara's will. There is a saying that when I make plans, God laughs. So how do you do it? How do you grow to have a relationship with a higher power and put yourself in his hand? I'm not sure I can explain it, but it was watching and listening to other people and learning from them, people who I respected and trusted. It was praying for really the first time, and it was scary. But what I did was take a leap of faith. It was like the time that I had to jump off a high dive for the first time in front of a whole bunch of people who had already done it. I held my nose, I closed my eyes, and I just yelled bonsai, and I did it. So little by little, I started to feel better, like I really felt there was someone watching over me. There were experiences that have happened that I just didn't think I could face on my own. I took a breath, and I prayed, and I trusted. When my mom passed away, I had immediate support and love from so many people at Beit Shuvah. But one day, soon after it happened, I was sitting at the beach, and I looked up at the sky, and I suddenly felt her all around me. And at that exact second, I had the same feeling about God. It was really the first time that I ever felt it. The first time that I felt there was something that I could lean into, that I could trust. So this relationship with a higher power began to grow. There are things today that I learn and know that I have to do that are not always what I want to hear or do, and my fear takes over again. It's very overwhelming. But I know I have that higher power now, and I listen and I talk and I argue with him. I have surrendered to having this higher power shape me, but I am a work in progress. At times, my codependence kicks in again, and I'm doing things because someone else suggested it. Ooh, maybe they'll like me more. I'll seem like a good person. What happens with that? I end up being resentful because I do the things that I really don't want to do. I have a conversation with my higher power every morning, and I turn my will and my life over to this higher power. Sometimes it works. Sometimes I get on the 405. And then I go back to that other person. But I really try mostly to be a better person. And when I get to that bad place, I think of the sky with God and my mom, and it becomes easier for me every second. My life has changed dramatically from learning how to connect with God and allowing myself to be in his hands. I recommend it. My life is not what I ever imagined it could be, and now I have such gratitude to be in his hands. Thank you. Gamar Kassim.
Thank you, Barbara. I would love to see the documentary footage of you fishing. We continue with the Kihine Kachomer. It's an original. The lyrics will be on the screen.
We are in your hands. We are in your hands. We are in your hands. Again. We are in your hands.
So I was going to freestyle tonight and make some notes and everything, and then I thought better of it. Our theme is God, relationship with God. So I'm addressing this sermon to God and to you. As I stand before you, God, and this holy congregation, made up of friends, on the beginning of this day of at-one-ment, the beginning of this day of renewing our vows together as a community and as an individual with you, God, I thought a review of how I got here and the state of our union. What does our marriage look like? God, with me, and I ask each of you to consider what your marriage, what your covenant with God looks like. As Rabbi Heschel writes, imagine my sermon's going to have quotes from Rabbi Heschel. The challenge we face is a test of integrity. We are all on trial. We are all under judgment. The issue is not political or social expediency. The issue is whether we are morally strong, whether we are spiritually worthy to answer your demand, God. Or shall we continue to be deaf? Shall we continue to be sensitive only when our needs and interests are involved? Rabbi Heschel writes, we have attained this high standard of living. We must seek to attain a high standard of thinking. The problem we face today, this was written 52 years ago, 52 years ago, excuse me. The problem we face is to be or not be human. So I'm thinking about this relationship, God and people. When I was a kid, I had radical amazement. I was in a state of maladjustment to words and notions because I had an authentic awareness of that which is the real reality. I had so many questions, and I asked everybody. And I was blessed with the patience of my Father to engage with me, to take me by the hand and help me sort out my questions. So God, you and I were together. I went to school, and there I had too many questions. I also, believe it or not, had disagreements and arguments with people. I lost the desire to conform. I was made fun of because I couldn't talk well. Told by teachers that I needed a special speech class. And I became conscious of my being different. But God, what I didn't know at that time was I was supposed to be. You created me that way. God, the sickness of my father, his heart disease, 7 heart attacks in 7 years. I had fear of his death for years. I didn't know what to do with it. When I went to shul and I heard the davening with my cantor, my chazan, it alleviated the fear, but there was no learning that went along with it. When my father died, as you know, I was totally lost. And I lost it all. Reality no longer existed. Your reality, God, no longer existed. Reality was, what could I get? What did my family need? I had this tremendous need to be seen and to be found. And I know people tried. I was just too angry, betrayed, and deaf. I couldn't understand, God, how or why you would do this to me, to my family. I still at that time saw you as the big guy in the sky. So I went through this period of shame and guilt over what I was doing and what I wasn't doing right. And yet I was obsessed and I couldn't stop. I listened to Kol Nidre every year, not as well as the one tonight, but it never meant anything to me. My need to be accepted by the wrong people, God, drove me away from you. Crime, alcoholism, starting, stopping, calling out in all the wrong languages to all the wrong people, and always hiding from you. And yet, I saw you and my daughter, Heather. I had this awakening, but God, did it really take me going to prison? Oh, yeah. Moses in the desert, Jonah in the whale, King David, Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, Dalai Lama, all had to be exiled to awaken to your truth and your call. So what happened? I began a regimen of study and prayer. I cried out to you when you called Dayeka to Adam. When I read that, I cried because I realized how I had been hiding from your call, God, for so long. When in reality, all I wanted was your embrace. I have recovered and am recovering my radical amazement. As all of you can testify, I am certainly maladjusted to normal ideas, words, and cliches. I read this from Rabbi Heschel and I understood it so well. You, God, were searching for me, and I finally came out of hiding to let you find me. I ask all of you here, are you still hiding from God? Are you still hiding from the call of Ayeka? Are you hiding from the people next to you? Are you hiding from the people supposedly closest to you? We try and hide, and yet we can't. Because God keeps calling and calling and calling. And in some moment, we recognize the call. And we have this amazing choice to either run towards it or run away from it, as Rabbi Matt described in the story of Jonah. Yet, God, I cry out for inner peace and serenity, and you give me none of this. As Rabbi Heschel teaches, you have to understand the meaning of inner peace. Humans have problems. And the more complicated, the richer we are. The deeper our problems. This is our distinction, to have problems and to face problems. Life is a challenge, not just a satisfaction, and the calamity of our time is to experience pleasure only. I'm not against pleasure, as most of you know. But the greatness of life, according to Rabbi Heschel, is the experience of facing a challenge rather than just having satisfaction. He says, I would be frightened if I were to be ruled by a person who is satisfied, someone who has the answers to everything. So God, community, where am I to find the answers to the problems I face and our world faces? Again, Rabbi Heschel, the Bible is the answer to the question, what does God require of us? But to us, the question is suppressed by another one, namely what we demand of God. We continue to ponder, what will I get out of life? What escapes our attention is the fundamental yet forgotten question. What will life get out of me? Well, God, I'd forgotten your question for a long time. And even now, from time to time, I still forget. I work hard not to forget it, and this coming year I commit to study more, be more patient, have more pathos, and live in truth more. Do justice more, be more compassionate, more caring, live with more love for myself and all humanity. So God, community, family, Harriet, Heather, I say to you that I pray you that you get hope, inspiration, joy, love, truth, justice, and a deep knowing that I care from the way I live my life. I'm going to ask you for a moment, what are people getting from your life? Are the people closest to you getting you and what they need from your life? Or is it all about what we get? So God, community, in these almost 31 years, I've spent most of my life living these principles and keeping them uppermost in my consciousness, except when I haven't. So I'm recommitting to you all to do these more. And I ask of you, will you do the same? Will you live with more justice, more compassion, more honor, more grace, more dignity, more humanity, more justice, and more truth? God, thank you. You showed me the way to passion and purpose. Sometimes people think I'm too passionate. And in this too passionate place, I've forgotten your call and the call of the prophets to help everyone to be a divine reminder. And two, as Proverbs teaches us, teach or speak to each person in ways they can understand. I forget it sometimes. I forget to speak in ways that another person understands and speak only in the way I want to. Sometimes I get frustrated with the trivialities of life, and I'm sorry. I commit to get better in the coming year and all the years to come. God, sometimes I get lost in the details, and sometimes I forget the details. I have done better this year in being more attentive to the concerns of the prophets and to your concerns, you, this community, and you, God. How are you being more attentive to the concerns of God, the concerns of our tradition, to care for the stranger, the widow, the poor, and the orphan? And how are you more attentive to the concerns of those that love you? Only by being attentive and engaged in these concerns can we respond positively to the assault on morality and decency and truth that is happening right now in our families, in our communities, in our cities, in our states, in our country, and in the world. God, how do I keep you in front of me? Rabbi Heschel teaches God created a reminder and image. What is the meaning of being human? To be a reminder of God. God is invisible, abstract. And since God can't be everywhere, God created us. You look at a human, you're reminded of God. In writing this, I realized the depths of Rabbi Heschel's poem that he wrote in 1929. It's called God is Everywhere. Here are a couple verses. God follows me everywhere. God follows me like a shudder. I yearn for rest, but within me sounds the call, come. God follows me in trams and cafes. Well, I forget I'm a divine reminder at times. Sometimes I forget that you're God and I'm Mark. I'm fallible, I'm great, I'm imperfect, I'm deeply connected to you and all people, and sometimes distant. God, you follow me everywhere because you, this community, and you as individuals see me. And when I forget that you're seeing me, it's the same as forgetting that God watches. I forget that you're my reminder of God, and I forget the joy I get from serving you. I pray that all of you will remember this about me and remember this about yourself. We're all divine reminders, divine actors, divine actresses, and we need to think of our true and proper place in this world, in this community, and in our families. I'm commanding and demanding all of us to recommit to living in this manner more this year, to be more and better reminders of God. Today, because for me the day starts in the evening, so it's all one day. Today I stand before you, God, and you community, and you family. Deficient in deeds is the Hayley prayer that Cantor will chant tomorrow says. And I stand before you and I say, Hineni, here I am. This is the beauty of our relationship. I do not do everything right. And unlike before and unlike some people, I am here. I'm not hiding. I ask all of you in this holy congregation to ask yourself, am I saying Hineni? Are you here right now? Are you present in the moment? Are you present for your family? Or are you still living in last year and years? Are you still thinking about coulda, shoulda, woulda? Are you still thinking only about you and not about you and God, you and your family, you and your community, you and your world? Yet how do I stand here before you, God, before you, my community, my family, through the grace of Tshuva? Tshuva is God's most unnoticed miracle, according to Rabbi Heschel. I ask for your forgiveness, God, and I ask for your forgiveness, community. And I also forgive all people who have actually harmed me and those that I think have. Today I'm free of resentment and anger, well, at least for the minute. I make this request in truthfulness, remorse, and responsibility. And how do I keep this moment with me at all times? I won't. What I can do, however, also comes from Rabbi Heschel. He teaches flashes of insight come and go, penetrate and retreat, come forth and withdraw. For this is the way all emanation proceeds. The light flows out of God and the light streams back perpetually. The immediate certainty that we attain in moments of insight does not retain its intensity after the moments are gone. Moreover, such experiences or inspirations are rare events. To some people, they're like shooting star, passing and unremembered. In others, they kindle a light that's never quenched. The remembrance of that experience and the loyalty to the response of that moment are the forces that sustain our faith. Faith is actually faithfulness. All of us have had an experience. Everybody sitting here is having an experience of joy, an experience of connection, and we have to stay faithful to that. Why do we have so many divorces? Because people don't take into account, they don't do a state of their marriage. And they forget those moments. Those moments when I knew you were the one. God, in my life, I've experienced periods of great joy and sorrow. I've done many things that I'm not proud of, and I've done many things that I am proud of. I understand this polarity as the essence of my humanness. and I suggest all of us see it that way. I do know now that you were with me at all times. I know now that you sent many divine reminders to me and sent many messages, and still do. I commit to you, this community, and to God to remember more of the moments of insight and stay loyal to them more in this year 5778. I also know that you, God, and you, community, always stay loyal to these insights and help me do the same. As we fully enter 5778, I ask you, this community, how are you going to stay loyal to this moment, to your moments of insight? How are you going to stay faithful to what you know is the next right thing to do? How are you going to continue to grow morally, spiritually, and intellectually? My solution for all of us, you and me, is to stay together, especially when we disagree. Keep talking, arguing in order to learn not to be right. Let's all live in this state of radical amazement, maladjustment, so we can continue to learn and grow. Remember, we are children of God, of our sovereign. We are all royalty. No matter what our race, color, religion, ethnicity, creed is. Commit to treating all of our fellow humans as divine needs and divine reminders. Let's all this year bask in the grace God gives us each and every day to live lives of tshuva, responsible, truthful living, and the grace God gives us to renew our vows each year. Show this same grace to others, and then 5778 will change our lives, the lives of those around us, and maybe, just maybe, we will bring about the Messianic dream. Gemar Chatima Tova should be a good year for all of us. It's up to you.
I'd like to ask you to turn to page 454.
Okay. No, I want
So these words probably look familiar to you. We've sung them a few times already this high holiday season, and we'll sing them a few more. But I want to give you a little bit of context. These verses take place after one of our great national calamities. Right after the Torah is given at Mount Sinai,
Thank you. Sweet. October.
y'all are going to miss the fun part, you know.
And then Sunday.
Right after the Torah is given at Mount Sinai, the Israelites build the golden calf. Moses smashes the tablets. He's enraged. God doesn't know what to do. And after Moses goes back up, he asks to see God. God, of course, says, "No one can see me face to face," etc., etc. But when God passes before Moses, these are the words that God uses to describe God's self. According to the Torah, these words, the Adonai, Adonai prayer, are as close as we get to God's sense of who God is in relationship to us. Compassionate, forgiving, gracious, merciful. That's how God presents God's self to us. And we call upon, in this season, we call upon God to exercise those attributes. Now, I know many of you have heard that before, but I'd like to introduce a slight twist on that. I recently learned this really short but evocative phrase that appears a lot in Jewish mystical Hasidic literature. Koach hapoel benifal. The strength of the Creator is in the created. That whatever ability the one who made us has, we have within us too. So it's not just that God is compassionate, merciful, full of grace, patient, abounding in kindness. Believe it or not, we are too. And so as we say this Adonai, Adonai prayer in a minute, we're not just calling out to God, we're calling out to ourselves. We're calling out to that part of us, which may be apparent, which may be buried, to connect with that part of ourselves that has all these amazing, powerful qualities, and finding a way to bring them out. And Yom Kippur is the day we're taught when we have the capacity to be closest to God all year. So hopefully, too, this can be the time when we get closest to that part of ourselves. So I'm going to ask everyone to stand up for this Adonai, Adonai prayer. And I ask you to call out to that most compassionate, most kind part of yourself. I know it's late. You might be hungry already. And if so, I got bad news because we still got a long way to go.
But Rabbi Matt.
Yes, Rabbi Borovitz.
We have to call out to the compassion, but we also got to make sure that everybody gets into the circle.
Into the what?
Into the circle of community and understands that we're all inside the gates. A lot of people, they don't realize where they're at. So the compassion is wonderful, but maybe we need to wake them up a little bit.
I was going to get there, but we can start with that too.
Well, you know me, I like to start with
Cut to
loud.
the chase. All right, here we go. Ready?
Balcony, I can't hear you, balcony. I hear you all the services I listen to you talk. Come on, give it out. Now, I want you to think of somebody, whoever you think, picture them in your mind, the least compassionate, the least grace, the least kindness, whoever you think that person is. I have faith. Somewhere in that person, it's in there. But we got to wake it up. We got to call out to them. That godliness in them, they don't know it's there, so we got to scream it out of them. Let's do it. It's possible.
This one's about you. Easy to talk other people into it. We know at the end of the day, I'm the hardest person to really believe it. I've got that doubt. I can't be that person. I can't be compassionate. I can't actually be graceful. I can't actually be kind. Yes, I can. Scream to that part of you. Bring out that godly part of you. It's possible. You can be more kind. You can be more compassionate. Find that within yourself and bring it out one more time. Here we go. Here, and you can feel that love and you can feel that connection, so we're going to do it once more, sweetly, from that place of connection, from that place of grace, from that place of compassion. We continue on page 400. We do not continue on page 400. Nope, not doing that. Whatever. We cut it? Cut it. Slicing and dicing. In a moment, we're going to sing the cantor's going to lead us in the Shema Kolenu, and then we're going to have our original. The Shema Kolenu is a prayer. Usually it's about asking God to hear our voices. But I think there's another way of looking at it too. Another way of looking at it is thinking about the fact that we get ourselves stuck. That we get ourselves caught in a place where we imprison ourselves. And then it's not just about asking God to hear our voices. It's about telling ourselves that we need to listen to the voices of the people around us, to break us out of the ways in which we keep ourselves stuck. If you see, I didn't have the time to get the page all lined up, so now I'm scrambling, 458. 458, 459, right? It says, do not banish us from your presence. Do not deprive us of your Holy Spirit. God's presence is always there. God's Spirit is always there. We're the ones who cut ourselves off from that. So as the cantor sings the Shema Kolenu, and then we hear the original, I ask you to reflect on the ways in which you cut yourself off from hearing that. The ways in which you banish yourself from that connection, and how can you open yourself up to being more connected and to hearing the call that's always there. Oh, I'm being told I should talk more. No. He's opening the ark. See, I always think I'm being told to talk more. Please rise for the Shema Kolenu, page 458.
Adonai
may be seated. Continue with our Shema Kol Nidre original. Beautiful. I'd like to ask Martin to come up to talk about the Isamu Prayer.
Thank you, Rabbi Matt. I'm Martin, a very grateful member of the Beit Teshuvah community. The Asham Nu, which we will soon recite, sets forth a litany of sins, sins that I am sure we can all identify with. The sin I would like to address, and it's a sin among many of my sins that at first blush might not appear to be a sin at all. And I assure you, Harriet and I did not talk about the thoughts we were going to share, and with all due respect, Harriet, I'd like to talk about the sin of perfection. I believe that perfection is no less a sin than the more obvious sins that are recited in the Asham Nu. Perfection, I believe, is after all a sin of ego, a sin of hubris. How audacious, how prideful, how arrogant to believe that I can be perfect. It is the ultimate sin of selfishness because it's all about me. It's the ultimate sin of inauthenticity because to believe I am or can be perfect is simply not to be real. I spent a lifetime believing that if I didn't get straight A's, if I was not the star of the team, or the president of the class, or the lead in the school play, if I didn't win every case, if I wasn't perfect, then I simply was unworthy. Unworthy of the respect of my peers and colleagues, unworthy of my parents' love, unworthy of friendship, unworthy of self-respect. What mattered most was not who I really was, which was, and still is, a flawed and anxious and insecure boy and youth and man. What was important was what others thought of me or what others might think of me if I wasn't perfect. And of course, I never was nor could be perfect. And knowing that just led me to experience shame, the feeling that I was defective and less than, and contrary to what we teach at Beit Teshuvah, that I didn't really matter. One of the core Beit Teshuvah values and teachings is, of course, Teshuvah, repentance, return, new responses. But perfection, or believing that I have to be perfect, is antithetical to Teshuvah. After all, if I am perfect, there is no room or need for Teshuvah. There is no need to take responsibility for my mistakes. There is no need to acknowledge my dark side or to make amends to those I have harmed, because the perfect me doesn't make mistakes. The perfect me doesn't have a dark side. The perfect me doesn't harm anyone. But here's what I've learned from my teachers at Beit Teshuvah, and it's really so simple. It's okay to be me, blemishes and all. It's okay to make mistakes, to err, even to fail, and still matter, because the saving grace is Teshuvah, that I can accept my imperfections, take responsibility for my mistakes, and make amends to those I have harmed. And if I can do that, the rest of the world will accept me for the imperfect person I am. And as we also teach at Beit Teshuvah, and in words which really have become watchwords for living a life of Teshuvah, we don't expect you to be perfect. We just expect you to be 1 grain of sand better each day. Thank you. Shana Tova.
Thank you, Marty. We continue with the Isamu Prayer, page 462. Please rise.
But God anew.
So, you know, it's real funny. We're saying all these terrible sins, right? Oh, and the music is right? I mean, it really is. When you think about it, Cantor, do you think that the tradition is trying to tell us, you know what? Don't take even your sins that seriously?
I think it's telling us that the best way to enlightenment is to just lighten up a little.
You think that?
Yes.
I agree. Okay.
I'd like to ask Nanette to come up to talk about the Al-Khat.
Hi, I'm Nanette, and I'm a grateful member of this community. When I reflected on the Al-Khat prayer and how I plan to sin less in the new year, it becomes overwhelming for me. I first had to take a look at my past. For instance, 30 years ago, I would never have admitted that I had sinned. As I stand here today, I can honestly face the people in my life and God to admit that I compromised myself and I made mistakes. Surely I have committed sins, and it was those choices and the mistakes that I made which led me to a life of imprisonment. That time of my life turned out to be a blessing that propelled me forward, and I had no choice but to focus on myself. I didn't like what I saw, and I was compelled to become a better person. I had to learn how to allow myself to open my heart and my soul to seek God's guidance. I learned, I grew, and I changed. It was His guidance that shaped me to become the person that I am today. But this isn't about the past. This is about the present and the future. So as I recited the Al-Khat earlier this week to prepare myself for tonight, I was reminded that I'm not a perfect human being. Imagine that. I'm a holy soul, but I'm not a perfect soul. I have made mistakes, and I'm not perfect. Even after all this time, I fall short. I may not relate to every one of the sins mentioned in the Al-Khat, but I don't always make a bullseye either, and I probably made up a few of my own sins. It's when I miss the mark that seems out of character for the way that I believe that I'm trying to live my life in integrity and in relationship with God and with others. So I must commit myself to recognizing those moments when I step out of character. When I recognize them, I become obligated to move back into character. I must be wise enough to know that I need help in these moments. I must also be able to connect with my soul to sense when I am depleted. And when I face those challenging times, I must seek guidance. So my plan for the coming year is to nurture even greater self-awareness so that in the event I do step out of character or cross boundaries, I can acknowledge my transgressions. When I acknowledge my wrongdoings, I will make teshuvah. I plan to be authentic and immerse myself deeper into community and the work that I do in helping others. At the end of the day, I must search my soul and reflect on how I have been in relationship with God and others. I will ask myself whether my heart was hard. Have I been covetous, haughty, deceitful, or insensitive? Have I closed my eyes or turned my back on someone in need? Have I held resentments or harmed anyone? Have I done wrong or have I done good deeds? This prayer holds me accountable and demands that I repent and atone for my sins, which I will do by asking forgiveness and through teshuvah, not only today, but every day. It also demands that I make change. It gives me hope and the strength I need to be open to that change. All that's required of me is to embrace each opportunity as a learning experience and be willing to become the person that God created me to be. Thank you, and Shana Tova.
Thank you, Nanette. We continue. We're going to read responsively on page 468. Please rise. Just about done. This is it, okay? We're going to finish strong, confess some sins, and we're going to wrap up. For the sin of the hardened heart.
And for the sin, come on, and for the sin of the tale-bearing lips.
For the sin of the lustful look.
And for the sin of the pious mask.
For the sin of enjoying violence.
And for the sin of polluting your earth.
For the sin of debasing our speech.
And for the sin of degrading your name.
For the sin of the yes that was no.
For the sin of the unkept.
Together, for all these sins, O God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement.
They are kulam elas niko selalanu nahalanu kavelanu. They are kulam elas niko
Too much.
For the sin of drinking too hard.
For the sin of not hearing the oppressed. And for the sin of closing our eyes. Together, for all these sins, O God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement.
They are kulam elas niko selalanu nahalanu kavelanu. They are kulam elas niko selalanu nahalanu selalanu nahalanu
A couple of quick announcements before we say Kaddish and finish up. We'll start again tomorrow here at 9 a.m. and we will go all day until about 6 p.m. In the middle of the day, there's going to be a children's service at about 11:15 in the outdoor garden area, led by Rabbi Andy and Cantor Shira, which will be great. Two other quick programmatic announcements. If you haven't gotten enough,
Also,
Yes.
tomorrow at 11:30, Reverend Mark Whitlock will be here to do a sermon with me. If you've never heard Reverend Whitlock, you're in for an absolute treat. And if you have heard him, he and I are going to be talking about God. And at about 12:15-ish is Yisker. Everybody wants to know when to show up. That's what I'm trying to give everybody the high sign for. High sign. Oh, and gratitude meeting is at 2 p.m. led by Harriet Rosetto. So all you residents who keep walking in and out and in and out and up and down, just know that if you ain't at the gratitude meeting, she'll know.
Two quick announcements, and then Meredith's going to say a word, and then we'll wrap up with Kaddish. In case you haven't had enough Jewish holidays, Sukkot is coming, so come and decorate the sukkah with the BTS Sisterhood. That'll be on Sunday from noon to 3 p.m., and there will, of course, be lunch. Simchat Torah shortly after that. I can talk to you about that after services. Marathon starting, so find somebody in development after services for more info. One quick programmatic plug. There's going to be this really cool program, Behind the Beatles, Saturday, October 21st at 8 p.m. You do have to sign up. It's going to be video. It's going to be audio. We're going to have some of the McCartneys there. It's going to be really, really great. So please come and check that out. It should be a really fun evening. Meredith, talk to us about what you're holding right there.
Good evening. You may or may not have heard about our high holiday food drive. If you were here on Rosh Hashanah, we gave out bags. Thank you guys so much who have brought food already. We've got a lot of food to donate to the Jewish Family Service of Los Angeles. If you didn't get a bag or you'd like to fill up more bags, we have some at the front, and our buckets will be out front tomorrow morning. You can bring them back. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Meredith. We're going to conclude our services with the Mourner's Kaddish. I know everyone's a little antsy, but if everyone could just keep quiet for a moment while we say Kaddish. If you're observing a yard site or if in the year of mourning for someone, I'll ask you to please rise. If you see someone standing by themselves, please stand next to them. No one mourns alone here. If you're saying Kaddish, I'll say it with you. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah. Amen. Be'alma divrach irutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon uvyomechon uvchayei dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'gala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbam v'rach le'olam l'mei omaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmeid kudsha brichu. Le'ela le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata. Tush bechata v'nechamata. Damiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. The one who grants peace and wholeness in heaven, you grant us a measure of peace and wholeness here on earth. We say together, amen. Thank you so much to Cantor Shira. Thank you so much to our choir, our band, to Rabbi Mark for his beautiful sermon. See you tomorrow, everyone. Shabbat shalom, Gemar Chatima Tova.